Call the meeting to order. We'll do a visual roll. I have no remarks. Public comment, there is none. Have a motion to approve the public works. Second. Thank you. Get it out. Any additions, corrections, deletions? Hearing none, all those in favor said aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Everybody should be pointed out that Sean Noonan got another haircut. Under the budget transfers, can I have a motion to combine items 5A and combine and approve 5A and 5B?
So moved.
Second. The motion is second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Can I have a motion to combine and approve the claims reports for Public Works and Facilities Management?
So moved.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor state aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Can I have a motion item number 7A, recommendation approval of a contract to S&K Building Services, Inc. to provide window washing services.
So second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Carries. Can I have a motion on item number 7B, FMP 24420, recommendation to approve contract with Gulf Acquisitions Group, LLC. Any discussion?
I have a question.
Go for it, Mary.
What extent, what kind of repairs are we talking about with this contract? I mean, I can probably tell you some of them having seen the structure, but what extent are we looking at?
Yeah, let them know
This
that.
is kind of a phase one approach. We've identified in the ballpark of probably $11 million that need to be done to the two decks.
Oh,
Decks
okay.
were constructed in, from memory, 1992 and 1993. We haven't done any really extensive repairs. This is kind of like an exploratory surgery for us to see the extent is. We're pretty comfortable with what the long-term needs are, but we're hitting our worst areas now.
Okay, so really obvious disrepair, et cetera. So, but you'll be looking at the concrete deck and surfacing and all that kind of stuff.
I wouldn't use the term disrepair. I'd use the term age. It's
Age.
30 years old on each of those. We keep them up very good, which is why we haven't had any problems with them all this time. And why we're starting to do this probing to find out exactly what the final bill will end up being for us to repair each one of those decks.
And the committee should realize that probably within the next 4 to 5 years, there is an $11 million price tag that's hanging out there. This will buy us maybe a year or two extra, but there is absolutely major rehabilitation needed on those parking decks in the near future.
So this would be kind of a heightened maintenance situation with some of the issues that are out there.
Hitting the worst spots, figuring out, how deep some of the corrosion goes, things like that.
Okay. Thank you.
Go to valet parking.
Yeah. COVID can't allow it, sorry.
Are there any other questions? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. I have a motion on item number 7C, FMP 24520, recommendation approval of a contract to General Mechanical.
So moved.
Second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Can I have a motion on item number 8A, which is ETSR 57, resolution for a license agreement, County DuPage and ETSB?
So moved. Second.
We have a motion second. Any discussion?
Why is this coming up here instead of under ETSB?
Because it's a contract for a lease with us.
We have the experts sitting behind you.
Good morning. Because the county owns the property, but through an intergovernmental agreement, ETSB pays for the support and maintenance of that tower. So it's a partnership. So it would rightfully come up through the county for approval.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Can I have a motion item for PWR 51120, Second Amendment to lease dated April 6th,
So moved.
South County and the DuPage County Fair Association. We have a motion and a second. So, what? Everybody got a copy of it. About the only thing we disagree on is it paragraph 5?
Yeah.
Part 5, yes.
Paragraph 5, Jim, is that correct? Jim, come on up and sit here. You're far enough away from me. And I'll scoot back as you start talking so you can take off your mask. So paragraph 5 is the only one we disagree with on right now.
Correct.
The one that was sent to you, paragraph 5, has the version that the county has drafted. But we also sent along a addendum page, which includes the wording that Jim McGuire and the fair folks would like to see inserted. We obviously have a lot of people who are involved in this paragraph. So Mary, if you can hold off 1 second, let's get all the facts on the table first, and then we can start the discussion among the committee members. So Jim, why don't you tell us how you want to change it and why you want to change it, and what the effect is of leaving it as it is.
Right now, being the place where community gathers, obviously that's not happening on our fairgrounds. And we really don't know what's in front of us. I mean, none of us really do, how long this is going to continue. So it's been a challenging time to bring any kind of events to the fairgrounds, and we just would like to keep the opportunities that, as much opportunity as we can in front of us. And some of the restrictions that were in there are things that we do regularly. The petting zoos. Petting zoo is not just a fair item. There's several events that we happen year round on our fairgrounds. We do a couple special camps for kids in the community, both at Easter and Christmas. And the petting zoos is an important part of those programs. We also do some of the multicultural events that happen on the fairgrounds. Petting zoos are also part of those events. Petting zoos is part of the fairgrounds. It's things that we do. We are all about animal welfare. As long as fairs have ever been around, that's what a fair is about, is animal welfare. And we do make sure that any animals that come on our grounds are well cared for, well maintained, well managed. It's our reputation, and we usually have vet checks. We make sure that health papers are all in place, that everything is in order. But those are some important uses that currently happen on the fairgrounds that we would like to continue. We think they're important. We think they're good for the community. We think people get some benefit out of it. And it's just something that we'd like to continue to be able to do on the fairgrounds. And
Right.
to have other opportunities that fits.
Do you believe you'll lose events by not having it?
There's a possibility that we would lose some of those events in not having it, or we would lose the ability. The event itself, if it stayed, would lose some of the, what makes it special for the kids. The petting zoo thing for the special needs kids is pretty important. It's a pretty cool part of the program.
So on the opposite, Mary, hold on 1 second. We'll get both sides out and then we can start talking. Brian, you're obviously the one who's been carrying the ball on the other end of this, you or the folks over at the shelter. If you would like to explain why some of the wording that Jim wants to have in there is not going to be helpful to your cause and stuff like that, let us,
Well, I got two balls, Jim, that I have. One, I mean, this is taxpayers' property, and I think there's a lot better uses for $1,200. And, we get into the financials, I look at this fair losing money every year. I see how much salaries are being paid, for a 4-day fair, and we run events all year in order to fund something that loses money. I'm not sure that the county should be in the business of subsidizing that. In my District 3, I have Daisy Days in Clarendon Hills. I have Darien Fest, Grove Fest in Downers Grove. Westmont has their festival. All the carnival rides that they have, and they fund it and run it. And they're cheaper than going out to the county fair. That being said, I'm not a big fan of getting $1,200 for. Somebody mentioned today it's 43% of our county property here. We get $1,200 a year. I think there's a lot better use for that property. That being said, the second ball I have is regarding the language that we worked on, and I'm going to turn it over to Laura because she spent a lot of time with Nick in trying to come up with some compromise to at least allow some of the stuff that we would say we'd want to ban totally, to allow it for the fairs and the 4-H club. So Laura, I'm going to let you speak more to the reasons, or Dr. Hannock, who's our vet here, who can talk about some of the issues going on. But there is legislation in Springfield talking about banning petting zoos because of the problems with them. There's, state is moving forward with a lot of animal welfare bills, and that's just the way of the future. They've been banning puppy mills, sales of dogs, and various municipalities. The state's got, they banned the elephants from circuses. Senator Holmes brought back again to do all the exotic animals. So there is a move that way. So it's not a matter of if, it's just a matter of when. And I think we can be a leader here in DuPage by, putting that language in there. I think Laura and our staff did a great job in compromising by allowing the animals still in the county fair and also with the 4-H club, and but any additional programs, absolutely not. So go ahead, Laura or Dr. Hannick, which one do you want to go? Go ahead, Laura, why don't you go, and then Dr. Hannick can talk more about the issues with some of the problems like we had like a year and a half ago when we had the rat virus outbreak, and we found out that we were running 9,000 rats out at the county fairgrounds, and the health department had to get involved because every other Saturday there was 9,000 rats out there for being sold for food, etc. But we had that outbreak in the county. Go ahead, Laura.
Yeah, so we don't disagree that teaching children about animals is an important thing. We think that there's better environments that we have really immediately here in our community that can do that, as opposed to such as Cosley Zoo. We've got St. James. We've got things that we do through our shelter as well, and a number of other animal shelters that offer humane education programming. And I think we're going to see that get expanded as we've seen COVID-19. People are getting creative in how to reach new communities, doing things online. We're looking at taking some of our programming rather than just doing it at the shelter, trying to take it to places like park districts. We've already been doing things through the library. So I think there's other really great opportunities for kids to get involved and learn about animals. We've seen a lot of health issues and there's risks involved that we think that there's better ways to do this other than something that's really brought in more for an entertainment purpose rather than an educational purpose. And I can let Dr. Hannick talk specifically about the health risks and things like that we see.
Yeah, exposure to animals does increase risk of disease. CDC lists over 60% of the animals, the diseases that are coming over are zoonotic as far as where it's connected from animals to people. Certain things like salmonella is very common in petting zoos that causes bloody diarrhea, can be fatal. There was a child that died in San Diego associated with a petting zoo, and that was due to E. coli, which caused a hemorrhagic kidney failure. So ringworm is also something that is very possible. So those are some of our concerns. The animal welfare part of it is a concern as far as using goldfish as prizes potentially is a concern. Just doesn't teach responsible pet ownership, even if it's just a goldfish, and sometimes those are dumped into ponds and may not be native to that area for sure. Other things, salmonella we talked about as far as chicks and can cause disease. So it's definitely a concern that way.
And just to mention one thing, Jim, too, the Illinois Humane Care for Animals Act already prohibits giving away the rabbits, ducklings, and chick at the carnivals. But Senate Bill 2472 has been introduced, which will expand the law to protect all animals from giveaway. So that's some of the language that we also incorporated into that Section 5.
And Brian mentioned going to a couple years ago when we had the CDC out, because our county had the hantavirus, which was zoonotic, passed by rats to people, and there was over 100 people that were sick throughout multiple states. And DuPage County did have a rattery that was positive for the hantavirus. So that was new for our area. So that was a great concern where we were working with the health department. And that's when we learned of all these, all the movement of rats just in one weekend at the Animal Expo in the county fairgrounds. And that was a concern. So I did go over there and seeing all the animals that moved through that during that weekend during the Pet Expo, and they had sliders, red-eared sliders, turtles that were just about quarter size, and it's illegal to sell those if they're less than 4 inches in size. And they said as long as it's for use for education purposes. So I could have bought them and just said I was going to teach a class or something like that, because I did see turtles there that were about quarter size. And those are notorious for also passing salmonella, red-eared sliders. It's very, very common. So,
And Jim, do you have any comment back on these things and their concerns? And then I want to go open it up to committee for a few minutes, and then we have to get moving on. We have another Major issue.
Just a couple items on that. The IAFE, we go through extensive training. It's something that the fair industry has been very aware of as far as E. coli. We do a great job of signage, hand washing stations, all these things in the area of petting zoos. We're very aware of the issues and the problems, and we address those. At the time when we had the outbreak with the rats, we got very involved with the health department. We put up signage throughout the entire building. We contacted and traced everybody who brought them. We actually banned them from use on to bring any of them to the fairgrounds for the time period that that was going on. The Animal Expo itself, they are no longer with us due to the fact that they tried to push some issues during the pandemic that they wanted to continue to meet. We wouldn't allow them. They've actually moved up to King County Fairgrounds, so they're not with us. So that's not really an issue that we're dealing with at the present time. But even during their times, we very much controlled and were involved. The Fair Association and the International Association of Fairs of Exhibition, all of us have gone through training programs to address the concerns of E. coli. Anytime you bring animals and people together, you're going to have some of those concerns. We do regular announcements throughout the fair. Signage is everywhere. Hand washing stations are all over the place at every entrance and exit of our barns and in our facilities. So we're quite aware of some of the issues that are brought up.
I just have
and
one
we
quick
do address
question.
them.
Okay. How many events, I know that this already allows for at least the fair, how many events would not be able to take, or would not have animals as you're aware of it today? In other words, the new contract would prohibit it.
Well,
We're
some
talking
of them,
about one event, five
you're
events?
probably looking at about 6 different events right now,
Okay.
but also the potential of possibility of other events. And that's a change from original. Original, the wording stated just shelters and rescues. And we do a lot of AKC dog shows and stuff that
Yeah,
has been
that's
added
not an
back
issue.
in.
So
Our
it's
training's been added back in, but originally there was a ban of almost many of our events, but.
And it's
right
great
now
that
we're at
we've
6.
amended that. So we're looking at roughly about 6 events that right now would not be allowed based upon the new wording. Well, the animal
Portion of it would not be, and we feel that what we do is substantial to protect people, the animals, and the events as part of the historic. The opportunities are out there for a lot of people to learn, but that is the opportunity of a fair and a fairgrounds. That's what we do, is to educate and train people about animals and get kids excited about animals.
Are those 6 events, are the animals the main part of it, or is it just a side thing of it?
It's a part of, those are parts of it, of the event. So like the special needs camps, it's a big part of it. The kids, we have a petting zoo that comes on the outside. The 4-H kids from the area, they come over and help us with that. And it gives those kids an opportunity to get out there and actually be involved with the animals, see the animals, similar to the things that you see with dogs going to hospitals. It's
Another event.
Important touches. Eat Fest, India Fest, they have
India
petting zoos.
Fest.
They bring petting zoos so the kids can.
So that's a side thing.
Side thing,
Okay.
right. They're side things.
Okay.
But
So the rest
they're
of
side things that are part of what we do as a fair, what a fair does.
Okay. All right, Mary, you were first. Go ahead.
Thank you. First of all, respectfully, Mr. Chairman, I would like to see us not ask people to take masks off at any time. And if people are unintelligible, if it's hard to hear through a cloth mask, I think we should have, pardon me, disposable masks available inside the committee rooms. So I would ask that request. These are difficult times. Another issue I'd like to address, the issue I'd like to address is the length of the lease. I would like to see, instead of a 2-year lease, I would like to see a 5-year lease, with the consideration that we eventually go to an extremely long-term lease, which I believe the first lease was for the fairgrounds back in the 70s. I think especially this year, the fairgrounds has really proven its worth to the county. Election, at the time of the primary election, also especially the COVID testing. So that's what I would like to propose today, that we go with a 5-year lease, which will also give the Fairgrounds Committee an ability to commit perhaps to longer contracts, which hopefully may become available. So that's what I'd like to see discussed today. Thank you.
Any other comments? Then let's talk about extending the term. Is 2-year, 5-year staff? What's your position on that?
What we did on this one, and working with the Fair Association, this is a stopgap measure. We were negotiating a full-term lease prior to COVID. This gets the Fair Association 2 independent fair events, are the county fairs, and then during the time we're going to negotiate the longer one. This is simply a stopgap to buy us time to negotiate.
Had it not been for COVID, we probably would have had the long-term one done. Mary, go ahead.
Okay, in response to that, I'd also like to see if we can't go to 5 years, I'd definitely like to see a 3-year lease. If I recall, in 2016, I believe the Daily Herald was asking candidates about the future of the fairgrounds. And if we sign this to September of 2022, it could become an election issue, which I don't think is fair. I personally believe we need to keep the fairgrounds. I think it has a great deal of value to the community. So I'd like to see at least a 3-year, but preferably a 5-year. You could consider both of those stop gaps, especially in light of what I believe Mr. McGuire was a previous 40-year contract or 35-year contract, especially from a planning viewpoint.
Brian?
I'd say this is county taxpayer property, and for us to take a piece of property and lease it out for $1,200 a year, I think there's a lot of better opportunities for us as a county to use that. The election commission I heard mentioned, well, that's us. COVID-19, that's us. You know, the sheriff likes to run his event out there, his fall festival. We'll offer to pay $1,500 for animal services to run our training out there. We can't spend how long did you spend there trying to find us a place to do the training for the animals that we have currently as a shelter, which is part of our statutory duty to take in those animals when they're surrendered? How long did you spend trying to find something on the campus for us?
We have looked extensively in the campus, and there's nothing available on the campus.
Yeah, except the fairgrounds. Again, that's one of the government mandates. And so we're giving out a piece of property, that taxpayer property, for no money. And I was asking our auditor, you looked at the financial statements. That's a going concern, correct? With the financial results for the last 2 years?
I have not seen the last year's results. They have had a loss for several years in a row. And
yeah, which any private entity would be a going concern, which means somebody's got to fund it from somewhere, because this entity cannot continue to make money. And we keep running all kinds of events out there in order to try to make this thing work for a 4-day festival. It doesn't make sense from a taxpayer standpoint, from the county standpoint, to give any kind of lease. And I think, given a compromise of doing 2 years or 1 year and 9 months to see if they can at least try to make some kind of profit there, it just boggles my mind that we're going to give a big piece of county.
Brian, that is the bigger picture that needs to be discussed over the long term.
So like giving out a 5-year lease is,
I don't agree to
buying this county for this piece of property that we could have all kinds of things we need. We heard it at I think this committee, the election commission is paying $1 million off-site to store their equipment. We got property right here. We could build a storage facility for less money.
So a couple of points. First of all, I respect and understand what you're saying, Brian. I think counter that there is more that goes on there than just the fair. There's a lot of things of public interest that go on at the fair, but there's a valid discussion to be had regarding what's best use for a large portion of property. With respect to the animal issue, I would assume there could be some agreement worked out between animal control and the fair regarding using some portion of it for training of animals. And I would hope that would be a cooperative agreement. So, I mean.
So that's done?
Yeah, we did it.
Why are you bringing it up?
Because it's a use of a piece of property there.
Okay. I understand.
We had to put it into a lease because we can't do it because we wouldn't have control of the property.
I understand.
So, I mean, obviously those individual things like that can be worked out. I do have concerns regarding the long-term viability of the fair. I also understand that in order for the fair to commit, somebody mentioned a month-to-month lease. I think the problem is in order to book events, you have to have some understanding of how long the fair is going to continue to exist. There's been discussions about getting funding from the state, and a certain length of time has to be involved to allow that to occur. I don't know if those rules have changed, but I would personally be in favor of leaving it at 2 years for the time being, so we can resolve where we need to be. I don't make government decisions based upon whether or not it becomes an election year issue. we have a duty, independent of our own elections, to try to figure out what's the right use of this property, and that's my focus.
Mary, you're next. I'll leave discussion for another minute or two.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In regard to the length of the lease, I had a long conversation with Mr. McGuire last week, and one of the contracts he mentioned, I believe, was a quilt show. And in the past, they've made a 3-year commitment. So at least if we can compromise with a 3-year commitment, again, it takes it out as an election year issue, which is fair. It's been an election year issue in the past. And it also allows Mr. McGuire, as he works with these groups, to commit if they are able to give a commitment to him. And we also have to recall or remember that in the next couple of years, they're going to have a very difficult time. There's so much fallout from what's happened in the last 6 months with the economy, et cetera, that I think a 3-year contract really gives them the opportunity to say, look, if you can, please stay with us for 3 years. So I really hope we can consider 3 years.
Go ahead, Liz.
Thank you so much. I agree with Mary about the 3-year. I think at a minimum of 3-year. I think that's fair because, as Mary mentioned, there are some organizations that do have 3-year, at least 3 more year contracts with the fairgrounds, and we'd be cutting them off at the knees. I also just like to make a comment about, if we were, we're not a business, we're a government agency, and we're not here to make a profit. The fairgrounds, I know I've been to Heritage Fest in Downers Grove, and we've been to the Fest in Westmont. And, we took our kids religiously every year to the county fair. They were in the talent show, the variety show. It does add a lot of value. And
those are discussions I agree with, and I think
Yep.
are great for another day. But right
Okay.
now, we're just talking about this lease.
okay.
And
Yeah,
because I have a chief judge that's going to hold me in contempt in about 2 minutes.
Okay. And also, I just wanted to mention really quickly, how much would it have cost the county to rent out a space for the COVID testing? How much would it cost the county to rent out a space to hold the elections, the primary election? I mean, we went over there. I don't know that I don't remember any intergovernmental. I think we maybe did an intergovernmental agreement, but I don't know that the fairground charged us for that. So I'm just.
Gary, are you going to make a motion to amend the contract to September 30th, 2023, which is on a 3-year lease?
Yes, I'd like to do that. I move.
I'll second that.
Thank
Do
you.
we have any discussion on extending it to a 3-year lease? Roll call.
Are we paying for the COVID testing now out there?
Yes.
Yes, we are.
Paying something.
So we're paying for that? So
5,000 a month plus expenses.
So we could need that next year. We could need that building next year to continue doing COVID. If COVID keeps going, we may need that to continue. I see them not over there. So we have a piece of property where we're paying 5,000 a month now that we can use ourselves next year for testing.
I've got to get going. Jim, I'll give you one last second on this. Quickly.
Yes. There are many, many uses that happen at a fairgrounds. And one of the main ones that you guys spoke a little bit about your garage. It takes money to maintain property. We own and purchased all those buildings. We built them. The Fair Association has built them. A lot of the money that goes into it is the maintenance. A lot of it goes into payroll, the daily maintenance. We support COVID testing. Every morning, we're there at 5 o'clock setting it up. My people set it up every single morning. We break it down every day. It's not just rental of a piece of property. We are supporting it. We are servicing it. And I think if you speak to your health department, Office of Emergency Management, they will tell you that our staff has done an exceptional job maintaining and helping that program go. I think if you talk to the Office of Emergency Management, they will tell you that we support
I
it.
got to cut you off. I need a vote on this.
There's much more that we do than just the fair, and we support many, many
Any
things
other
in the community.
statements by county board members? None. Roll call.
Ozak,
Yes.
Tronatori.
Aye.
Healy,
Aye.
Krajewski,
No.
Larson.
No.
Noonan.
Aye.
Passes.
Passes, it's going to committee with 3 years to September 30th, 2023.
Which with the wording for the animal as it's
Right,
incorporated.
now I got to take another vote. Okay, now that it's been amended, we'll take a final vote.
To terminate the lease, and that's it. Okay. We can just vote against the lease.
You can just vote against the lease. Same thing. So do we have a motion to pass the lease as amended?
Well, I think we already have. There was a motion on the floor to
That was just to amend it to September 30th, 2023.
I assume you had a motion passed it before because you can't really amend it.
Oh, that's right, got a motion in a second. So
Right.
any other discussion on the lease itself? Hearing none, roll call.
For WIP
Passage of the entire,
As amended.
as amended.
as a
With,
month.
with the animal wording that is
With the
incorporated.
animal wording
into
that's on the
service.
contracts. Right.
Ozark,
Yes.
Tornatori,
Aye.
Haley,
Aye.
Krajewski,
No.
Larson,
Aye.
Noonan.
Aye.
Passes.
Passes. We'll have another shot at that at the finance committee, I'm sure. Okay, thank you, Jim. Thank you, everybody. Next, we have the chief judge. We'll try to do this.
Mr. Chairman, just want to let you know, HHS should have started 7 minutes ago. I know 3 of our members are on HHS. We'll stick around for another 7 minutes, but we're going to have to leave at 9:45. I think.
I was 10 minutes tied up because of the other.
Economic development still going on.
Okay. All right. Who wants to take it from here? Who wants to move forward?
We
On
have
the
a
presentation.
presentation. What I'm gonna do is I'm
You've all gotten it. We're going to fly through it.
I'm gonna fly through it. What we want to do is give you kind of the history. Some of you aren't aware of the history where all these courts have been. In 2014, next slide, Joe, there is no traffic courts in the 505 building. We had one in this building, one in Glendale Heights, one in Addison, and one in Downers. In 2015, we took the one from 421 and we moved it over to the courthouse. That was the first one. In 2017, at the request of the chief judge at the time, we moved over the Glendale Heights location. That was relocated from Glendale Heights Village Hall to here. We still had Addison, we still had Downers Grove. And then you'll recall in 2019 to 2020, we spent a lot of time talking about the Downers Grove facility. Ultimately, in March, the county board voted to move the Downers Grove facility to the 505 building. Again, this was pre-pandemic. Okay. Then with COVID in May, Addison sent us a formal letter requesting that we not go back there. They actually formally on July 2nd terminated the lease. During that interim period, we took the multi-purpose room in the 503 building, the annex. We took all 3 of those rooms, we put in a temporary traffic court there. So right now we are holding 3 traffic courts in the 505 building and the 503 combined. We will be building out a 3rd traffic court building this fall using COVID dollars. We're able to use the COVID dollars because Addison canceled the lease on us due to COVID. This is the last slide we have where we are today. We still have not addressed the Downers Grove situation. There's been 2 options identified. One would be to bring it in as a 4th courtroom to the 505 building. The other one is that we have had discussions with Glendale Heights. As you'll recall, we broke the lease with them in 2017. They are interested in hosting us again. We have set up some general terms with them. But as we are today, we're looking for some direction from the committee and ultimately the county board as to what solution we want to pursue for the Downers Grove facility.
Your Honor, you want to sit there or whoever wants to sit there? Okay, we voted last year, didn't we, to build a courtroom in the 505 building?
Correct.
In the courthouse.
The vote was to bring Downers Grove up to here.
So we've already bought this out to move Downers Grove to here. And Chief Judge is now looking to have some ideas about taking it to Glendale Heights, which is where it was in 2017, or where one of them was. Go ahead, Your Honor.
Well, we have to, it's in the annexes right now, Addison traffic court, that you want to call it, and those are meeting rooms for the state's attorney, public defender, probation, and they have special events in there. It was an emergency measure. I had to put it somewhere. I put it in there. It's far from ideal. It's very crowded up at the bench, so on and so forth. So we have to move it. The clerk has to send out repeated notices to all the people in traffic court whose cases have been continued to tell them it's not at Addison traffic court in Addison. It's now in the courthouse and it's at different times. So the clerk has to keep generating these notices. There's some confusion a lot of times, as you can imagine. So going forward, obviously, we have to put it somewhere. I can't keep having traffic court in these annexes. And there's two viable options, I suppose. They're both have pros and cons. So one is in the courthouse, as been mentioned. The other is come up with Glendale Heights. My position is I think Glendale Heights is better, and basically because the
The rents for Glendale Heights would be the same as you were renting Addison before. So it's nothing really additional there. The security was always a problem. I've got security out in Downers Grove, a deputy and 2 CSOs with the magnetometry. When that closes and comes in, I've talked to the sheriff. He told me twice now, he can just move that security team to Glendale Heights. There's no additional cost to provide security at Glendale Heights anymore. So that's a wash as far as security. So all our courthouse, all our facilities will be finally secure after 20, 30 years, 40 years. I think that the Glendale Heights used to have us. I've talked to Glendale Heights. They are welcoming us back. They did a lot of improvements to the parking, the signage, the facilities, so forth. I don't think they ever wanted us to leave, but they are welcoming us back. They told me that. All of the distance between where the police departments are and where the towns that feed into Addison are to Glendale Heights is significantly shorter than coming all the way to the courthouse. Significant in most of these towns. I've talked to Bob Berlin, who favors keeping a field court for the public and for the police. The police sometimes, if they're too far away, they have to take people off the street to come 40 minutes into the courthouse to have traffic court. And then there's coverage issues for the police and people covering beats and things like that, taking them off the street. I don't think that's the best thing to do. When we were in this in Downers Grove, the problem was, I think everybody initially thought the best thing to do is try to keep it down for all those same reasons. But unfortunately, it just wasn't a feasible alternative to build a $1.3 million building and rent it for $80,000 a year. It wasn't something that was reasonable to do. I think this is completely different because we don't have to build a building. Glendale Heights is there. We've used it before. They want us back. And as I said, there's no extra cost other than what you were renting Addison before anyway. So I've talked to the chiefs of police. They all said, well, 2 of them said because the distance is pretty close, it didn't matter to them. They could do the courthouse. They could do Glendale Heights. I'm trying to think. I think that was Hanover Park, and I forget who the other chief was. I'm sorry, they told me that. All the other chiefs said Glendale Heights would be preferable to coming into the courthouse. The advantage of the courthouse, of course, is it has the security. But as I said, the security won't cost any more at Glendale Heights. You don't have to rent, which I understand. The thing about coming in has always been the volume of people. So the sheriff, I talked to him yesterday, he said he thought, and so did the state's attorney, that the number of people coming in to that one hallway on the first floor, when you add all the towns from Addison and all the towns in Downers Grove, is going to be an issue. I've tried to do the numbers. The numbers sometimes are difficult to break down. I think it would be between 260 to 300 people coming through the lines each day. You have to remember you have jurors who are coming in, 60 a day about, on top of all the traffic people who are coming in. So you've got quite a few people coming through those lines. So you've got parking issues that you'd have to pave the fairgrounds parking lot. I don't know how much you'd have to pave. I don't know what that costs, but you'd have to have parking. And I think the security lines are going to be a problem. And I think all those people down there is going to be an issue. So I know there's pros and cons in each. I'm not, saying I won't do one or the other. I think, lastly, if have to keep in mind, rather than trying to shoehorn Addison into the courthouse, because of COVID, I've got a backlog all over the place. I've got a huge backlog in traffic, which I'm trying to address right now by doing something different with the calls. I've got a huge backlog in evictions, and that's finally released by the governor. I've got the focus courtroom, which is the first offender drug, needs help with conducting hearings and trials instead of just the one courtroom because the numbers are large. Domestic violence could use another courtroom to go to hear these bench trials instead of just continuing them all the time because there's only one domestic violence courtroom. orders of protection need help with the hearings. So there are alternative uses for that space rather than just trying to shove another traffic court into the courthouse. Basically to save rent. And in the size of DuPage County, to have one rent for one facility, I don't think is that bad. But I understand, you know, the money, it's an important consideration.
If we
That's kind of
don't,
where we're at.
oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's.
Just so you know, the financial implications on some of this, if we move it to Glendale Heights, then we will not be building it here, which means we cannot use COVID dollars, which means for eternity or until the next chief judge tells us to bring it back here, we would be paying rent in Glendale Heights. We would still be building on our own dollar the courthouse for Downers Grove here in this building.
No, we're actually moving Addison here with COVID money, no matter what, that's happening. So Addison's coming here because we have a letter from Addison saying, get out. The Downers is what we're trying to figure out how to relocate.
Oh, whoa, I'm really confused.
Yeah, I'm really
I have
confused
a
now.
question, Mr. Chairman, because
Go
we're
ahead.
using Downers Grove and the Edison concurrently. My understanding, Judge, that the discussion about the Addison Field Court, which used to be in Addison and is now in the courthouse, would be moved to Glendale Heights. Okay, that's my understanding from what you just said. Now I'm hearing from Nick, and I'm not sure what, what I thought I understood at the original presentation PowerPoint when we first got it, that we're going to move Downers Grove to Glendale Heights so that we can use COVID dollars, and Addison's going to stay here in a new courtroom. Is that what you just said?
So
That's totally different from what I'm hearing from the chief judge.
And we're actually saying the same things, but in different ways. In order to use COVID dollars, I'll tell you right now, in order to use COVID dollars, I have a letter from Addison saying, get out because of
I
COVID.
get it. In order to use COVID dollars, the courthouse, the courtroom that we're gonna build in the courthouse has to be, it's Addison.
Because of Addison. Now, when the chief judge, when we move Downers up to Glendale Heights, if that's what the decision of the board is, then the chief judge will likely reconfigure who reports where at that point. So
I understand at the end of the day, there's gonna be a new courtroom in the courthouse. And presumably some field court will be in Glendale Heights. Whether it's gonna be Addison or whether it's gonna be Downers Grove is going to be a decision for you in terms
Or
of
the next chief judge.
or the next chief judge, because there may be a complete configuration of reconfiguration of the towns. But I'm just not sure if we're talking about Addison today or we're talking about Downers Grove. I'm still a little confused. I'm all for going to Glendale Heights. I think that makes sense as opposed to bringing, another courtroom, another field court into the courthouse that's already overtaxed given COVID. Whether that's Addison that goes there, which would seem to be the geographically logical place to go, or whether that's Downers Grove, because we can use COVID money to build an Addison courthouse here, I guess is going to be a decision for, all of us to make at some point. But at the end of the day, we're going to have a new courtroom in the 505 building, Glendale Heights, and what we currently have. And I'm all for that, but it's going to be up to the chief. I guess my point, to do what you want to do, Nick, if Downers Grove is going to be moved to Glendale Heights, then the whole issue you had with the chiefs becomes irrelevant.
So the only way, obviously when we're doing that, we're trying to utilize COVID dollars to build one of the courtrooms.
Sometimes you can't.
And that's because of the Addison letter, that's why. It's more or less kind of a matter of semantics at the end of the day, because obviously the court calls that are happening down at Downers would likely not be happening at Glendale Heights. You would probably reconfigure who reports to Glendale Heights. Most of the people that go to Addison probably reconfigure. So
Nick, I get it. We want to build a courthouse, and we want to build a new courtroom in the courthouse. Call it the Addison courthouse, but actually move the Addison courthouse to Glendale Heights. That's what we're looking to do. That's the ultimate objective here, right? Tim, you're nodding your head, am I right?
Whether you decide to
That's
do
what he's
505
suggesting on a college. I would want to call it. That's the ultimate objective.
because of COVID.
Right.
That's what he's suggesting. But, you know, I'm gonna let Jimmy and then Grant talk. My position is to bring him here. We've already voted on this to bring Glen Downers Grove here. All we're bringing is Glendale or Addison courtroom, which is 100 and some a day on average, and it's not going to tax our entranceway. It's not going to tax our parking or anything else. Every time we've done this, everybody said, you know, the sky is falling. We're not going to be able to get it through. And every time we have, as a clerk would tell you, with 50% of the tickets we had 10 years ago, the amount of people going into the courthouse is down because of the number of cases that are filed and everything else. So Jimmy, I'm sorry, I was talking.
No, I think what I'm hearing here is that we're worried about COVID money and non-COVID money. Well, Addison Fruits, obviously, that was a COVID expense. We also have an administrative order, and the chief judge today said that he can't continue there because he's got too many people coming. So I'm hearing two governments telling us there's too many people at the courthouse right now. So from what I'm thinking is we should be able to use COVID money to build both, because we can't, what we had put in temporarily isn't good, right? We're getting 200-300 people. You just said the state's turning to sheriff. There's too many people in the hallway, which is a COVID concern. So even if we don't, we have to build something, because that's not gonna do it. So we go to Glendale Heights, we build a new thing, we run both of them through COVID. I think that's the easiest thing.
Glendale Heights has no upfront money. There's the buildup, Glendale Heights.
I just fixed it. I don't know why. And again, Jimmy, that's their opinion as to whether the doors can handle it and things along those lines. I think we've shown and we've done enough studies, you know, where we've actually literally just said that the new one you put in basically the meeting room isn't safe. So you got too many people too close together. You got too many people coming up. So we need to make an adjustment because of that. Which is why we're already building a courtroom, which will be ready January 1st. And I think they're both COVID related. I would bring everything back here and make it COVID related. Go ahead, Grant.
I was just gonna say, I agree with the chief judge. When we talked about initially getting rid of Downers Grove and maybe going to Woodridge, Addison was still gonna stay open. So we're always thinking about having one field court stay open. Now Addison kicked us out, so we moved to Glendale Heights. Chris and the chief judge shift around who goes where. Me in the house, one Addison, and you know, so we get COVID money. But you know, this is not a big change. It's not like he's asking to reopen something. The initial plan was always to lease one of all. It wasn't we were going to readdress the rent.
If they were going to.
I have a committee member wants to speak. So where you're talking about, chief judge, you have to make a decision now as to whether or not we're going to close this. So there was a decision that was going to be 4 years down the road. It wasn't going to be 6 months down the road. And I said, why do we have to make that decision today? He and I and you aren't going to be around at that time to do it. So there was never an agreement to shut down all the field courts and bring them all in.
So we're going to have this first bite here at the apple, and then I'm sure Grant's going to call a meeting in 2 weeks in his committee. And then we're going to probably find, or we can just have the finance. Go ahead.
Yeah, obviously there's something that impacting the entire county, so we can discuss it at finance possibly next week. What I'd like to see, because it's a finance issue as well, I understand, Chief Judge, what you're saying regarding moving the cost from Downers to Glendale Heights, but there is a difference between moving those costs internally and eliminating the cost of sending a clerk and a deputy and another deputy, because you wouldn't have to do that if it's internal. And that is a substantial savings versus just moving that cost up to Glendale Heights. I understand it's cost to cost, but those costs could be saved if people were here on campus. I also understand the COVID concerns of having that many people on campus. So what I'd like to see is an apples to apples comparison of the cost of the two options. And then, you know, some sort of an understanding of the logistics of what would be involved in doing both. Because I understand the presentation, but those specific questions aren't really being spelled out, and we need to get to HHS.
So, and having been the person who's dealt with this before, when it was dropped on me by a prior chief judge, I want it out of Glendale Heights now. Literally is what we were told. And the chief judge and I are both gone in December 1st. So there'll be another chief judge. And the problem is to me, is that the next chief judge can look at it and go, yeah, I want it out, bring it here. And that can happen. And that's why my opinion is to bring it here. We have the space, we have the ability, we have everything that's needed. One last comment, and then we're going to let handle it and finance.
Larson stated about the financial, to see that impact. We did have the sheriff in front of us telling us he's statutorily down 10 people in the courthouse. And when one of the sheriffs retired, he's been bringing 2 of those CSOs in. When they move everything in here, he has to have one of those 3 that are currently in Downers sitting in the courtroom, but he's got 2 extra ones to fill the slots here. So that's, even more towards what he wants to do with the cost savings. And maybe if the chief judge could give us pre-COVID, maybe if we can see just the flow of people coming in here. I don't know if you can do the docket for the whole week, like morning and afternoon, and see how many calls there are in afternoons and in mornings and all 5 days. And we can see how the traffic spread and where, maybe there's, a day that there's not a lot of people there that, we can shuffle around the courts too.
Actually, within the last year, we actually have a lot of that data already. We've also done counts of people walking in pre-COVID.
Yeah, I think
parking spaces and
Monday,
everything else.
Friday mornings.
Right. And thank God the clerk of the circuit court does such a great job. He has all that data for us. And again, Chris, thank you for constantly being able to give us the data that we need. And I know I've been a pain in the butt, but if your people could count trials again, that'd be great, because I also have trial counts now next to Chris's office. That's the number of trials that are handled there. So, Your Honor, would you like to say anything else?
Well, as far as I talked to the sheriff, he said there's no additional security costs. He's going to bring 2 CSOs and a deputy from Downers to Glendale Heights. So I'm not sure what.
Well, if they came on campus, they wouldn't have to do that, so it would be safe.
He said that he's fine on campus, that this is not affecting his coverage.
But he's 10 people short in the courthouse right now.
I think he's been hiring these CSOs. I don't think he's
He's short 8, but he can bring those to.
I'm telling you,
By
that's what
bringing
he
people
told
in
me.
here, we
He
save
told me
money.
he can do it, and it's not a problem to move them from Downers Grove to Glendale Heights.
And the last word will be Sam Tornatori.
Yeah, I can see where there wouldn't be any additional cost moving from Downers to Glendale Heights. But I think instead of having 3 deputies in Downers, you'd only need 1 if it was in the courtroom here. I think that's what Member Larson's talking about. Does it have to be all or nothing? Is Glendale Heights would they lock us into a 5 or 10 year lease, or could we go for a year, one at a time? Okay, so while we're building the Downers Grove courthouse here / Addison courthouse, we're not going to be able to get everybody in here immediately anyhow. And while COVID is going on, it seems to me, Judge, that your primary concern about moving everybody into the courthouse is COVID related. There's too many people in the courthouse at one time. So if we were to go to Glendale Heights for a year until we get through the pandemic, move down, move one of those field courts into the courthouse at 505, still use Glendale Heights, but the understanding is in a year or when we're through with the pandemic, we move everything in here. That seems to be a logical way to solve the problem.
We thought of that except for one thing. What money do you use to build a new courtroom? If it's
Well,
Glendale Heights,
I
it's automatically.
think if it's all, as Jim said, if it's all related to COVID and we can do it that way, that's fine. But at the end of the day, if we can't use COVID money, the cost of the courtroom we were going to build was what, $500,000?
We already appropriated.
We find the money. That's all. So I don't know. I mean, I think Glendale Heights is a good stopgap during COVID, because then it reduces the number of the foot traffic in the courthouse that we would otherwise have. And it also gives us an opportunity to get out of Downers Grove. So it solves 2 problems that way, with the understanding that eventually everything moves over to the courthouse. And I'm sorry, Mr.
We
Chairman.
will also continue this conversation during finance and probably in 2 weeks at JPS. So those people who didn't have an opportunity to speak, and my apologies. We'll be talking more about it over the next month, and we'll probably have something within the next month going into the county board. Thank you. Without more, we are adjourned.